Satan as an oppositional figure and all that. So you're looking for kind of human origins of ideas. And this is a very post-Enlightenment idea. If you start from a worldview which is not wedded to the idea that this world is all that there is, the supernatural is not something we take into account, God is not an actor, an agent in history, prophets are not real prophets that predict the future and speak, and revelation is not a thing either. We bracket all that out when we practice the HCM, the historical critical method, and we focus on the worldly origin of ideas. So where did this idea of God come from? Well, it came from the Mesopotamians. So the devil, it came from the...
No, but
what I'm trying to say is this. So if you start from, say, an Islamic point of view, or even a traditional Jewish point of view, which is not a European post-Enlightenment concept. So we live in a world which is created by God. There is the unseen realm, which contains what you would call jinn or shaitans or angels and so on. We're not going to look for some kind of literary origin in a Persian for the existence. They exist. And we know this because the data of Revelation tells us this. You see the eyebrow goes up. Now the eyebrow goes up because and this is a reconciled difference, because if you're looking at it from a secular Western post-Enlightenment methodology, I'm being quite polemical here, you're going to exclude all this and look for the human origins of mere religious ideas, the history of religious ideas. But this is a very secular view. If you start from a different paradigm, the one what I've just described, this brother was trying to describe, actually you're not starting there. The universe is much more than just what we observe through our secular eyes. It has an unseen realm, God exists, prophets do foretell things. But the historical method excludes that on principle. And I think that's a philosophical position. It's an assumption which we can challenge quite readily.
But the way you frame that suggests that the only alternative to a secular approach is the belief in the Abrahamic tradition, but there are other options. So I may be a hardcore Zoroastrian who still agrees that those ideas are transmitted into the Abrahamic tradition. So I'm not into that.
No, but I'm saying secularism shouldn't be privileged. Now, I know in the Western Academy they'll say, well, that's how we do things, and this is neutral or scientific. And I'm saying it's not. It's based on a set of philosophical assumptions which exclude what is accepted, which is seen as axiomatic to most of the human race, and always has been. And that's the existence of God, demons, angels, the supernatural. It's open to that unseen realm. So to look into the genealogy of these so-called religious ideas as if they're a human construct, which is the presupposition of a lot of this, is invalid from a different understanding of history. Practiced by people like Ibn Khaldun, for example, the famous Islamic historian and sociologist and so on, who had a much more multidisciplinary, multidimensional understanding of history. So you could look at it horizontally, but he's also open to the vertical as well. And I think that's much more interesting and fruitful, because you're not implicitly draining everything of its metaphysical content, which is a philosophical move, which many people don't accept. Do you understand what I've just said?
I understand what you're saying, but even that argument is based on the presupposition of knowing necessarily what my philosophical or religious...
You personally, no, I was critiquing not so much yourself, about the historical critical method, which is based on secular premises. And I'm saying that is, as I say, an historical methodology which comes from Western Europe. It's a white, European, male, post-Enlightenment construct. I'm saying reality is much more than that, and we shouldn't, because of the hegemony of the West, basically, at the moment, in universities, academically, the way we do it here is how everyone else should do it here. So we're looking at a genealogy of ideas, which actually are objective and not human constructs. And this is the problem. I know, but in the West we think they are human constructs. But that is a Western secular philosophical notion. It's not objective. It's not based on facts. That's what I'm saying.
But I think that approach is no less valuable in building a more holistic understanding of the themes and the subject matter. So I think we can look at it from that perspective, and then
I'm not convinced, because if give me
reject it.
Well, no, give me an example. In the study of Islam, for example, there's a professor at Oxford called Nikolai Sinai. He's not a Muslim. He's a very distinguished German academic who teaches Islamic studies at Oxford. He's written a book called The Historical Critical Introduction to the Quran. And he says in the introduction, he talks about the historical critical method in the introduction. And he's very clear that practitioners of the HCM do not accept that there's such thing as prophetic predictions, the supernatural, that God intervenes in the world, etc. But okay, you come across a hadith which Muslims accept, where the Prophet actually foretells events in the future, or there's a verses in the Quran that speaks about events that are due to come in the future. The HCM would say, well, they can't be. They're not historical. Predictions don't happen like that. There are no prophets. There's just human beings. Okay, so what you're doing is you're basically, before you even look at the evidence, you're debunking it. You've already ruled it out a priori. You've got your presuppositions.
Yeah,
and I'm saying that is invalid.
Assumptions, but even coming from an Islamic perspective, you're making assumptions from that perspective as well. So
but indeed, but
it's about weighing them up together, I would say.
But I'm saying
like a multidisciplinary approach.
The claim of the HCM is the claim to be objective, and I'm saying it's not objective. There is some objectivity in it, but a lot of it is packed with assumptions which are toxic to people of faith, and in fact are based on philosophical assumptions that come from European history to do with their rejection of Christianity, rejection of the church, and based on a quite a very secular understanding, which is actually now our universe is not secular. It's a philosophical lens, and I'm saying there are other ways of doing history. I mentioned Ibn Khaldun, for example, is a massive intellect in the Islamic tradition who had a much richer, multi-dimensional understanding of of epistemology. That's a better model, I would argue, than the secular one.
But to argue that the secular approach is toxic to those with a more spiritual or religious approach is exactly the same as saying that those with a more religious approach, those views are toxic to someone with a more secular view. So how do we resolve?
Yeah, but we don't have that kind of equality. We have the hegemony of the secular paradigm in academic studies in this field. Yeah. We don't have this problem that there's no we're going to have that doesn't exist.
Right.
If you, I mean, I
can only speak for myself.
No, I was talking to a friend who's doing masters at SOAS. I won't mention who. Literally, it was after on Friday, and he was doing a course on the Quran, and he was taught that the Quran story about the Noah and the flood are derived from earlier Mesopotamian myths.
Yeah.
Whoa. And I'm thinking, really? Now that's the genetic kind of fallacy, because there's a similarity with an older mythological story, therefore it's just myth. Maybe there are multiple accounts, and behind those narratives lie a reality, an actual flood that happened in Mesopotamia.
But then there was narratives before the narrative as well.
No, but the a priori commitment to that being the explanation is the danger. But actually, if one is to investigate those possibilities and then just weigh them up or say, well, look, these are the options, let's have a look at them and try to be as objective as we can.
But the HCM doesn't allow that, because it doesn't. It starts off by saying that prophets who predict the future are not datum of history. They are to be seen as late, they're mythological, they're legendary, they're not objectively real. I mean, I referenced Nikolai Sinai's book. But HCM doesn't normally allow that, because it doesn't allow God's intervention in history as a factor that historians can quantify and say,
but an
this
Islamic
happened.
Approach wouldn't make space for the HCM approach. So they're both as close to each other as...
I think it does, a modified form of historical critical method. So I meant Ibn Khaldun, a multidisciplinary, he was able to look at societies historically in terms of their systems and their ups and their downs and so on, without any reference to revelation explicitly necessarily. But he was also aware that God is in control of history, and that we don't live in a secular world. So he was able to have different registers, different epistemologies. The HCM only has a secular register. So the datum of revelation is simply not taken into account. And Islamically, that is unacceptable, because God exists and has given and has spoken to mankind through the gospel and the Torah and the Quran or whatever.
Can I ask an important question? So, you see all these, teachings and concepts in different religions.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned in
Zoroastrianism.
And it's also available in different religions like Judaism, Islam. It's the same exact concept. So my question is, with some
variations on
with
these,
some variations.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, if we, for example, take the teachings you mentioned earlier.
Zarathustra.
Yeah, it first came up in the this teaching
Right.
by this person.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to understand.
Who gave it? How did it come to us? Is it like
Through revelation,
through
teaching?
meditation? Is it
I believe
through God? Because you also
It came
mentioned
from something. We can agree on that.
you also mentioned monotheism, meaning that there is one God to worship. So did it come through God?
that there is one creator.
Creator. So did it came from that creator? And if it did came, did it also maybe in some part of history, prehistory to that point, was also some teachings to different civilizations, predated that civilization?
I mean, we can speculate on whether those teachings reached other people. I find it sometimes more beneficial just to look at the evidence we have rather than speculating on what may have happened to which we cannot attest with evidence.
We can do that, but I still want to understand where did it come from? Because if it came from a person, no difference than me, why should I accept it and take it?
I would be more interested in the value of the message
necessarily
than the person.
Forget about the words of a person. You just want to learn
If there is a valuable
because
message
that's what's
that was,
timeless. No human is timeless.
if there is a message of value that was revealed 3,500 years ago, let's say, and if that hadn't happened and the message arrived today, would it be of any less
these
value?
values are supposed to be like something good for us. Yeah, if we follow it, it will work and it will like bring peace and
I certainly
prosperity.
imagine that the parts of that message that are congruent with the ones that you see in your own belief system, you would agree are valuable.
I didn't even come to this part of
So I'm saying
history or future.
if he spoke about the idea of personal responsibility for one's actions, personal judgment for one's righteous or evil deeds during the course of one's life, if that echoes something that you hear in your own teachings, then naturally you would think that's a theme of value, right?
That maybe
That's a
not
teaching of
started
value.
with these teachings or this
It may not have started there.
system of belief. It
I
may
said
be
that to him
natural.
earlier, and he said
It may
if
be
there's no
natural.
historical proof of it,
Yeah.
then
Then
it's
it
just a claim.
started with that.
No historical bit. So this is back to the secular
Maybe
methodology
natural.
again.
Natural.
It's only what can be verified by secular historians that is true.
I can't comment on evidence I don't have.
So I like to believe or think, not believe or
Right.
think that could be natural.
So these are your
in
presuppositions.
humans.
That's a good word, think.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
So what give me proof that this is not something natural in a human to act like this, to take responsibility in his action or their action, and it started with that book.
So sorry, give you proof that say again. Just
How can we verify?
that it's not something natural for man to believe
it
that he will be
started with
judged
that,
for his personal actions.
That it actually just
And these
the
values
first ever,
started with this
Yeah, the
book.
first ever exposition of that idea was through Zoroaster. How do we know that?
No, I don't make the claim that he's the first to have ever said
But
it.
he's earlier than.
However, it seems evident to me that it's the
Earlier we
earliest
made the
record
claim
of
that
this.
other religions took from that, or like
Well, I
shape
would have to
or-
build a case for that. So I kind of began to do that with the timing of certain new statements in the biblical corpus, which seem to coincide with the arrival of a new group of people and then the development of those ideas during that period. I mean, you can take it or leave it, but it
that's
seems
the
like
whole
an
point of Speaker's Corner,
interesting.
though. That's the whole point. of
It
Speaker's
seems
Corner.
like an
Take it or
interesting
leave it.
path of investigation, perhaps to try to build a coherent thread of events.
I think the problem is if one's looking at the genealogy, the origin of these ideas, just on the human level, because you will believe the existence of demons and Satan, for example. If Mesopotamians brought this, Zoroastrians brought this idea across to Judea, it doesn't mean it came from Judea. This is objectively real. These entities exist. They're bearing witness to the truth, or they are evidencing the truth
I think what it
of these
shows is
things.
that one group of people believed it,
No,
and then another group
no.
of people came to believe it.
But yeah, but it says much
Just-
more than that
but you're
because
saying they exist. Just
no, but we know they exist anyway, so that they
how
are.
do you know they exist?
What, you don't?
You believe they exist.
No, it's not a question of my belief. They do exist. It's not a question of my beliefs or my thinking, any more than I believe.
What are you referring to specifically?
No, it's like saying I believe the sun exists. Well, it's much stronger than that. The sun does exist.
You're conflating
I
believing
can
the
actually
sun
point
exists
to.
with believing angels. And
Yes, absolutely.
So explain how you would verify that the same way you would verify the sun exists.
Verify. Well, through experience would be one way. So humanity, well, the accounts of Legion, you can Google them. Humanity has always encountered angelic beings and demonic beings in all religions: Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and so this is and also human beings have always experienced the existence of the sun. I would
We're
suggest.
experiencing it now.
Yeah, but yes, but
I'm not experiencing angels and demons.
no. I'm not saying you have to experience 24 hours a day on
I
tap.
haven't experienced them.
But human beings in general have experienced
maybe
the
they claim to
James.
have
Maybe you haven't came to.
Well, yeah, but they claim to see the sun as
But
well.
we are seeing the sun right now. I
Yeah,
don't know how you conflate
but
those
there's
ideas.
lots of things I can't see that I know are real. I can't see subatomic particles. I can't see laws of
But we can
physics.
measure them.
I
We can
can't see.
calculate
I
them.
can't see your consciousness, your mind. Can I see your?
Was
ha- ha-
there an experiment?
There are
to
lots of
measure-
things.
to measure the existence of or the presence of
Yeah.
demons. I think.
Here's how we know. I'm saying that empirically, that through our experience, human beings have known the existence of these phenomena always, in virtually all religious traditions. Secularism denies their existence because it's a post-Enlightenment Western European white male
I don't
construct.
reject their existence, but you say you know they
No,
exist.
no, I'm saying that secularism. You may not, but secularism does reject them a priori as factors.
Secularism per
So it's
se.
a good example. If you look at the Gospels, Jesus is portrayed as someone who exorcised demons from people. It's all over the Gospels, and he was a miracle worker. A secular historiography would dismiss all that as myth.
But do you object to the idea of comparing
On this topic,
angels and demons with whether the reality of
You
angels
asked how
and
we
demons with
knew
the reality of
things.
the sun?
You asked how we knew things. I'm saying through experience, and we have different kinds of experience.
It's somehow different because
Experience
it's
is
not
different
visible
kinds of
to the
experience,
eye.
but it's still experience based. Yeah, I can't access your mind. I have no knowledge that your mind is
I've been
real, and I
fascinated
can't
to
prove
know
that.
about your personal experiences of these phenomena.
Well, we can have a private comment. I can talk to you about these things, but it is very widely attested in the literature. For example, in the book, William James's book, The Varieties of Religious Experience, like a seminal work of the early 20th century. He's a pioneer of psychology. Well, hang on a second. Can I ask you, as I'm trying to explain?
Sorry.
And he's a psychologist, and he narrates a lot of these things, some numerous accounts across a wide variety of different backgrounds of people. So it is a very frequently attested experience. I'm saying Western secular methodology tends to exclude that as a valid source of knowledge about the real world out there. And when it comes to, say, religious works like the Gospels, where Jesus is portrayed as exercising people, it will typically not see these as actually real objective experiences, actual accounts of what Jesus did. And I'm saying that is to betray the reality of what it could well have been real. They could have been made up stories, but in principle they could have happened, actually. But secularism will always reject them.
Everyone can agree on that it could have happened.
Yeah.
Everyone can agree. That's one thing everyone.
But secularism will reject it as historical.
It would reject
How-
it, but
how-
Thank you. That's my point. It will reject it.
how-
that's far
How
away.
to
But
verify?
hold on, they could be real. Is a mile away from we know they're real. That's a different statement.
An openness to reality is not something I've noticed in secular writers on this subject. And the example of demons is always now in our materialist West explained away as a function of mental illness or disturbance or hallucination. And that again is a materialist prejudice, a secular prejudice against a phenomena that is widely evidenced and known in mankind. And this is doing a disservice to the truth, because demons and angels, they do exist. So this is the problem.
We'll agree to disagree on that.
Okay, we can agree to disagree, that's fine.
Magic and witchcraft. Then.
Thumbs up from the back there.
You don't believe. So there is no such.
I don't
act-
believe in them.
Oh,
Such
so.
an act to do magic.
I don't believe in
and
demons.
interact with
We have to
these.
define what a demon is.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, no, come on. We're all, when they say demon, yeah, we're all like disagreeing with each other, but we all
What
kind
about jinns
of,
then?
we all
Jinns. You
agree.
don't call them jinns, right?
Who's you lot?
Muslims.
He's not a Muslim. He's got a beard. You're a Muslim, right?
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Sorry, I do apologise.
No,
Yeah,
no apology
yeah,
needed.
yeah. I don't like that
It's
either.
easily done. Don't
Sorry,
worry.
exactly.
But don't the Muslims believe in jinns?
Yes.
Yeah? And what are jinns to you?
Do you believe in it?
Do I believe jinns are
Demons, devils, or
are
You get good and bad jinn, can't you? You get
So
good
you and the brother
communities and
agreement
bad.
with that then?
Yeah.
You and the brother here is on
yeah,
the
I agree they exist.
Yeah, the unseen realm actually exists, and it actually interacts with this world and changes things. People have encounters with demons and angels. They make a difference, and there's masses of evidence that this happens in the world. The evidence is there. We don't want to see it in the West because it goes against our materialist prejudices about the nature of reality. I'm saying reality is different from the Western paradigm and includes all of these areas of life which do make a difference in the real world. Those of us who believe in God and believe in the unseen have experienced this stuff. Billions of people have.
I mean, just from a personal perspective, I don't rule out the idea of a spiritual realm or higher dimension, whatever you want to call it. I don't necessarily subscribe to a given description of what that is. I don't think we can just define it or defer to some revelation.
No, I'm saying we shouldn't. What the Western paradigm does, it explains it away as psychiatric illness and so on. I'm saying that is erroneous and based on a false understanding of reality. It's not that the West doesn't recognize it. It does try to debunk it. It falsifies it. That's my problem. It's much more hostile than just saying, "Oh, we don't know." It actually goes out and says to people, "If you testify to these things, you will be referred to a doctor." That's my problem.
Can I ask you a simple question, right?
Sorry, everyone wants to comment. Yeah.
Are you listening? Listen to the question, big man.
Oh,
where does dreams come from?
Big man.
Where do what?
Dreams.
Where do dreams come from?
I'm not sure. I suspect they're like a function of the brain.
We had this discussion earlier about the dreams, like whether it's reality.
It may be a portal to some spiritual dimension.
You know, the best way to look at all of these things is, you know, like the spiritual realm,
Okay.
the spiritual realm, the unseen. I'm a Muslim as well. Is that before, like, for example, the simple way to go about it is this. Now, why do we believe in the unseen as Muslims? Fundamentally, it's because we believe in the prophethood of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Now, if the Prophet, peace be upon him, tells us that there's something called a jinn, or there's something called heaven and hell, then we believe in him because we believe in the evidence for his prophethood. Once you establish evidence for his prophethood, then whatever he says is the truth.
I didn't even realize you were here.
Let me just finish, yeah?
He's not a Muslim, by the way. He's not a Muslim.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, he doesn't accept the premise of your
Yeah,
point.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the best way to, like, instead of saying, "Oh, do jinns exist or not?" the best thing is the one who tells you about jinns, who's the prophet. Ask the question: is he a real prophet? Because if you argue that he's a real prophet, and the deduction follows with all the evidence that he comes with, then whatever he says after that is all true. Because
How do you determine if he's a true prophet?
That's a good question.
That's a much bigger question, but I'd rather defer to this gentleman's approach, which is to defer to
Experience. Yeah, it's an empiricist approach. I'm not denying revelation. I'm just saying that there's also a wider appeal here to experience.
sensible for me.
Yes, I agree.